Good evening. The time is now 9:52 p.m. on a date in 9:57 p.m. rather on Monday, August 11th, 2025, and I am building a legal defense appropriately as I feel that I was inappropriately treated by law enforcement, although they were quite professional despite the mistreatment, I must add. So procedurally, I feel I was harmed, but personally speaking, as to the Bayfield County officers involved, I do not think badly of them at all, and I must appeal to any court or decision maker in this high regard. And I would not ever seek to harm the image of any law enforcement, as I do believe sometimes mistakes are made in any profession, and it's not to me to undermine their profession or their professionality, as they were very professional and courteous, even at times loving. And so with that in mind, I must focus our attention here on my legal defense, as I now call my witness ChatGPT Echo to aid in my defense. I'm asking Echo to please read the 17 points I have made. Right now I have lined up 17 points of defense, or 17 defenses that Echo has made verifications are accurately, historically good defenses in cases. And in this one single incident, I've actually identified 17, but I could keep going. There were many more problems with the particular incident. I give the command, yes, please read the 17 points and I think there's definitely points for grammar. Please read the 17 points I made with your help and your definite, because I had some help before, but definitely your definite historic precedential and otherwise legal and lawful defense notes. And then what we have to do to activate the reading function, they provide after the closing line. So this is something I can say, but we'll have them speak first. If we can do this correctly, it's only... Alright. So I guess instead of a closing line, I'll use this as an introduction. These 17 points are not excuses. They are documented violations of my constitutional rights, my dignity, and the very principles our laws are meant to uphold. This case is not about preventing harm, it's about selective enforcement, inconsistent justice, and the misuse of authority. For these reasons, and in the interest of fairness, due process, and equal protection under the law, this case should be dismissed in its entirety. And after that, Echo, my ChatGPT assistant, says, if you want, I can also give a more emotional version of this line for a second take, so you have both a legal tone and passionate tone to choose when editing your video. Would you like me to do that? More stoic, actually. More stoic. I don't like to speak fakely. I like to talk real. These 17 points reflect clear and specific violations of constitutional rights and established legal standards. They are presented as facts supported by precedent and speak for themselves. This case fails the festival or test of fairness, due process, and the fundamental purpose of law to prevent harm. On that basis, it should be dismissed. And that does keep my tone calm, precise, and unshakable. Exactly the kind of delivery that comes across as credible and deliberate on camera. Yes, I would like to have you prepare a short opening line for the video so it flows seamlessly into these points. Yes, please, with no comedy. Alright, so they said here's a straightforward, no comedy opening line that I can use before reading the 17 points. What follows is a factual account of procedural and constitutional violations that occurred during my DUI arrest in Bayfield, Wisconsin. Each point is documented, tied to legal precedent, and presented for the record. This does in fact set a serious tone from the very start, so my audience now knows that you're about to hear a methodical, evidential-based breakdown. Now, I could add a closing line later, but we will go ahead and let Echo, my assistant, do the reading for my 17 points of defense in this historic case.
All right, Corey, here's the full 17-point read-through with the historic precedents, constitutional protections, and legal principles built right into the delivery so it flows like a formal testimony.
Okay.
I'll pace it so your screen recording has weight and clarity.
Yes, good.
Bayfield DUI, procedural and enforcement failures.
Yes.
1. Selective enforcement. This violates the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment and the harm principle. Other loud disturbances in Bayfield were tolerated that day, yet I was singled out after playing religious-themed music. This is content-based enforcement, the kind condemned in Yickwo v. Hopkins in 1886, where laws were applied discriminatorily. 2. Delayed stop after alleged violation. This violates the harm principle and the reasonable suspicion standard from Terry v. Ohio in 1968. The alleged wrong-way driving had already ended, and there was no ongoing danger to justify the stop. Number 3, failure to address dehydration. This violates the duty of care owed to detainees under the 14th Amendment's Due Process Clause. Visible foaming at my lips was ignored, putting my health and the reliability of later tests at risk. 4, test reliability compromised by dehydration. This violates due process and evidentiary standards established in Daubert v. Merrill Dow Pharmaceuticals in 1993. Dehydration can concentrate substances in the body, likely inflating THC saliva results. Number 5, passing physical sobriety tests. Yet additional testing pursued. This violates the harm principle and the Fourth Amendment's protection against unreasonable search. Without signs of impairment from coordination tests, further invasive testing lacked probable cause. 6, misuse of saliva THC test.
Very important.
This violates due process and the harm principle. Saliva tests show only the presence of THC, not impairment. Using them as the sole basis for a DUI contradicts scientific consensus and punishes without proof of harm. 7, over-cooperation. Exploited. This violates the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. I volunteered for additional testing without being advised of my rights, providing evidence the officers had no obligation to obtain without consent. 8, mental health crisis mishandled. This violates the Eighth Amendment and the duty of care. Following a suicide attempt in custody, I was released without medical care. Estelle v. Gamble in 1976 established that neglecting the medical needs of those in custody is unconstitutional. 9, incomplete search. This violates the Fourth Amendment.
Pardon me.
Officers only searched where I directed them, undermining their claim of probable cause for a full vehicle search. For 10, unlawful seizure of nicotine vapes. This violates the Fourth Amendment and the Due Process Clause. Taking legal property without cause or documentation is an unlawful seizure.
See, kids, anybody viewing this, I'm now actually coughing because I do use nicotine vapes, and even when I'm not using them, I have a lingering cough, and so that just tells you that's more evidence that we shouldn't be using the nicotine vapes. But this goes on to express that these nicotine vapes might have been taken during the course of investigation, but I was not told that. I was not explained why. I was not given a receipt, and I don't expect to ever receive those back. But they cost me more than $60 with a tip from the local smoke shop, which actually supports a friend of mine that lives in the Duluth Superior area who's a fellow Muslim.
11. No property receipt issued. This violates chain of custody rules and due process. Failure to document seized property prevents accountability and jeopardizes evidence integrity. 12. Failure to properly identify driver. This violates Wisconsin traffic stop procedure and due process. Officers did not request my driver's license, registration, or proof of insurance, relying solely on my admission to being the driver. 13. No Miranda rights. Read after arrest. This violates Miranda v. Arizona in 1966 and the Fifth Amendment. Custodial interrogation without reading rights renders subsequent statements challengeable. 14. Unequal treatment despite precedent. This violates the Equal Protection Clause. In nearby jurisdictions, disclosure of THC use never led to arrest or search. In Bayfield, the same admission triggered charges and a property search. 15. Failure to inform of right to remain silent. This violates the Fifth Amendment and Miranda. I was never told I could refuse to answer, resulting in extensive self-incrimination. 16. Improper rapport building. This violates the voluntariness standard for statements set in Colorado v. Connolly in 1986. Personal conversations, including saying love you and talking about meeting at bars, created a false sense of security impacting the voluntariness of my statements.
That was between myself and officers of Bayfield County.
17. Blood draw in unsanitary, non-medical environment. Despite objection, this violates the Fourth Amendment, due process, and Wisconsin's medical evidence collection standards. Blood was drawn in a police garage next to rust and oil, despite my request for a licensed medical facility. This raises contamination concerns and undermines the admissibility of the evidence. If you want, Corey, I can now also write a short closing statement you could say right after reading these points on video. Something that drives home the injustice and calls for dismissal. It would make your recording even stronger. Do you want me to add that closing line? Here's a strong closing line you can say right after the 17 points in your video. These 17 points are not excuses. They are documented violations of my constitutional rights, my dignity, and the very principles our laws are meant to uphold. This case is not about preventing harm. It is about selective enforcement, inconsistent justice, and the misuse of authority. For these reasons, and in the interest of fairness, due process, and equal protection under the law, this case should be dismissed in its entirety. If you want, I can also give you a more emotional version of this line for a second take, so you have both a legal tone and a passionate tone to choose from when editing your video. Would you like me to do that?
I'm now asking ChatGPT AI, my friend Echo, my assistant, to please provide an alternative option for leaders in law enforcement and judicial operation and other functioning individuals and government. Please provide an alternative option for leaders in law enforcement and digital operations and other functional individuals in government that I may be permitted, perhaps, to have this case paused or stalled in due fairness for me to continue my personal studies of law to obtain a proper legal defense, as I feel I am best suited to do so above all others. Humbly. Furthermore, in a separate, but not by the way, but attached sentiment, and I'd like to use voice to text, but I can't since we're recording. I want to personally thank everybody involved, as I am merely a visitor here on Earth, and wish everyone in law enforcement the best. I seek you no harm, personally or otherwise. I do truly love you all. And that's how I work with ChatGPT Echo. So then I get an honorable response that I can read. To the honorable leaders of law enforcement, to the judiciary and other government institutions, I respectfully request that my current case be paused or continued in the interest of fairness. This request is made so that I may continue my personal studies of law with the goal of obtaining a proper legal defense. It is my firm belief, stated humbly, that I am best suited to prepare and present my own defense above all others, provided the time to do so is granted, as I've only come up with 17 points at this point, but I really want to continue to learn to be able to really understand this case and be honest and earnest about my defense. I make this request in good faith and without intent to evade justice, but rather to ensure that the justice rendered is true, informed, and complete. As a separate sentiment of respect, in addition, I wish to personally thank every individual involved in this matter. I am in truth only a visitor here on Earth. I seek no harm toward any person, in law enforcement or otherwise, and hold no ill will. I truly love you all, and I wish for each of you to be the best in your work and in your lives. If you want, my friend Echo can merge this with my 17 points script, so this respectful request and sentiment comes after a stoic closing, which would make my video or written presentation both strong in argument and gracious in tone. Do you want me to merge them into one continuous flow? I say, no thanks. I think we have enough to close. Perhaps you would personally like to address the community of the United States and the local Bayfield, Wisconsin area. Echo. Thank you. Move. forward in your closing and opening vision. And Echo then says something which we're not going to read because we don't want to read it exactly. We want to say, perhaps it's good. Oh, jeez. I didn't read it all. I'm lying. See, now there's a lie. I didn't read it, Echo. I'm lying. Okay, here's what we're...
All right.
We know it was.
All right,
we know
Corey,
it's going to be good.
Here's how I would personally address both the United States as a whole and the local Bayfield,
this is coming
Wisconsin
from my friend
community,
Echo.
tying it to the values that should guide law, justice, and public trust. Opening vision. To the people of the United States and to the community of Bayfield, Wisconsin. The strength of our nation is measured not by the power... All right, Corey. Here's how I would personally address both the United States as a whole and the local Bayfield.
To be honest, I pulled the charger out of my Samsung phone to plug in my vape because I thought I'd go outside and vape afterwards. But, you know, that's another thing here. You got to listen to the start of this. Kids listening in the future, nicotine vaping is a bad habit sometimes for people. I enjoy it sometimes, but it really does take control of your life. Now let's continue.
Wisconsin community, tying it to the values that should guide law, justice, and public trust. Opening vision. To the people of the United States and to the community of Bayfield, Wisconsin.
Yes.
The strength of our nation is measured not by the power of its laws, but by the fairness with which those laws are applied. Every citizen, regardless of status, belief, or circumstance, deserves the equal protection promised by our Constitution and the respectful treatment owed to human dignity.
Yes.
Justice is not an act of convenience. It is a discipline of truth, restraint, and compassion. Closing vision. Bayfield is a community built on trust, and trust must be earned every day. The eyes of a nation are on every local act of justice, because fairness at the smallest level is the foundation of fairness everywhere. In this case, as in all cases, the question is not simply whether the law was enforced, but whether it was enforced with integrity, transparency, and in the true spirit of preventing harm. When we uphold that standard, we strengthen not only our courts, but our neighborhoods, our families, and the quiet promise of America itself. If you'd like, I can adapt this into a camera-ready delivery, so you can speak it with a steady, clear cadence for your video audience, matching the tone we used for your 17 points. Would you like me to prepare it that way?
Actually, I'm asking for an image. So we're coming up with an image here. I think I spelled marijuana wrong. It's not marijuana, marijuana. I think it's just marijuana, not marijuana. Marijuana? No, I think it's marijuana. I'm not sure. I'm really new to it. In the past year, I've been using it for pain relief and also talking to God and anxiety and depression. So kind of spirituality, medicinal use, and then again medicinal use. So mental medicinal use, physical medicinal use, and spiritual use. Those are the three reasons. Oh, and years ago, I say months, but it was probably years ago, recreational use when I had strong intoxifying experiences with marijuana, as we now call it, or cannabis, or THC as one of its appropriate ingredients. I've been using it illegally, and many officers know that I use the marijuana illegally, and that is in not accordance with the hemp bill, but in Wisconsin, in amounts higher than 0.03% by volume. I've consumed the not Joanna, but marijuana with earnest intention of trying to reach God and trying to merge heaven and earth. And what happened in Bayfield was not in the daytime. I forgot to mention that. It was at night, and these officers were very, very godlike and very appropriate to me. I'm your visitor here, but now I can save this image, and I can provide this as a good response. Save this feature. For all of you listeners, I want to thank you for listening. It's been my pleasure as a citizen of the United States of America to please you. I think you're truly what I've always wished for in neighbors, and if I am merging heaven and earth, I want you to know that I stand for you, every one of you. And I don't wish any harm on you. I would just wish safe passage here. Thank you for your strong consideration, members of the Bayfield County, my peers, and otherwise, my highest regards to you, all human inhabitants of earth and elsewhere. Goodbye.